Hello everyone, it's Julia. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm so very excited because this is going to be a VR and I haven't filmed a VR in a while. I don't know what's happening, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of tags out there in TarotTube, and also because I also watch BookTube, of course. There's not a lot of tags. There's a lot of videos indeed, but not a lot of tags, and I don't know whether it's a sign of the times, in the sense that perhaps people they enjoyed their tags and now it's time to move on. Maybe that's one of the reasons. I have no idea. I do, however, really enjoy them, and whenever I see someone who puts, some effort into these prompts, I just feel this joy that I have whenever I'm watching the video, because I'm already mentally picking all of my decks I'm going to show for these prompts, and that means that I'm having a great time. And so today this is a VR to Editor Speak by Nova Mundi Tarot. Now this is a list of, I believe, 13 or 15, 15 prompts or 15 decks that I recommend. And if you guys know me, you will know that whenever I talk about a deck, I'm always very careful before saying that I recommend something. And the reason is that I know that we're all different. And I know that our journey within tarot is at different stages. And so obviously, there will be decks that I recommend for a certain type of reader. There will be decks that I do not recommend for a certain type of reader. So I'm always very cautious. And let me tell you, this has been a challenge for me, actually finding, decks that I would just directly recommend for certain prompts. Hasn't been easy, but let's see. Okay, so let's start with prompt number 1, which is the Inner Child Work, a deck you recommend for inner child healing, one that feels safe, nurturing, and playful, ideal for reconnecting with innocence, creativity, and emotional truth. That was very difficult because I had at least a couple of decks out of, the 10 or 15 that I bought recently. There's one that really felt like the right pick, but because this needs to be, see why it's difficult for me. Okay, it's a challenge. So I had in mind a deck, and if you watched my latest videos, you will know that I just bought it during the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival in Sydney. However, I haven't had enough time to work with it in order to know whether I recommend it or not. And so this needs to be a deck that not only responds to the prompt itself, so nurturing, feel safe and playful, reconnected with innocence, etc. It also needs to be a deck that I have enough experience with, so much so that I can actually safely recommend it. And so I had to go with the Inner Child Oracle by Amanda Lynn Aisling, and let me just zoom in because we obviously want to see the cards. This is a deck that I have used. I bought it originally back last year in February, I believe, when I was in Europe for my birthday. And at the beginning, I have to say, I completely misunderstood this deck, so I made a mistake. And see, that's why I'm hesitating. When I'm recommending a deck, I really need to feel okay and confident enough in recommending it. So this deck, had I stayed with my first impression, I would not have recommended it for Inner Child Work. However, once I started not just going through the cards, but actually reading the guidebook, working with it, pulling cards, and then I actually used it with my members. For an entire month, we were pulling cards from this deck for determine, let's say, feeling the energies of the week. So there's a lot of playfulness. You can see it immediately here for the card number 29, Run Wild. Playfulness exercise. One of the best ways to be wild is to be messy. I like that. like that. So there's a fantastic way to use this deck. It really accompanies you in your journey, and it definitely feels like it's a very, it's an excellent deck for that type of inner child work. The reason why I originally did not think that it was the case was because whenever I filmed my first impression, I was going through the cards, I was feeling that this deck has got a lot of cosmic vibes, and I don't necessarily associate cosmic vibes with the type of work that I would call inner child work. So I wasn't entirely sure whether this would have worked or not. However, when I actually started, as I said, work with it, I immediately, I regret saying that I didn't think that it was a good inner child work deck, because it absolutely is. And yes, I highly recommend it. So the next prompt is Shadow Work, a deck that's powerful for helping readers face their shadows, honest, deep, and unafraid to confront the difficult. This is your recommendation for deep transformation and self-inquiry. Another deck that honestly I really wanted to be comfortable in sharing after doing a lot of readings and a lot of work with it, but I am very confident with this deck. This is the Cries of the Souls Oracle by Isabel Surf, illustrated by Daphne Sabine. This is by Rockpool, by the way. This is one of the more recent decks that they released on the market about probably a month ago. I did get it during the Mind Body Spirit Festival as well, and I remember with kind of an awkwardness when I filmed my first impression to this deck. I was kind of shocked by how powerful and deep, but also very confronting this deck is. And it was a shock because I wasn't prepared, because honestly, when looking at the artwork, which is very minimalist, as you can see, a couple of colors, that's all, it almost feels like it's stamps. Sometimes we have stamps that look pretty much like these images. Not to denigrate the images, I'm just saying, I'm just trying to compare them to something that we know. And then I was reading the keywords, not the keywords, I say the titles, because these are more titles than keywords, although this one is a keyword as well. But fear, judgment, and criticism. And then I was reading the message at the bottom. It says, I look upon myself benevolently and tolerantly. Sorry. I know that this one feels and sounds like a very positive message, but my shock was due to the fact that then I went into the guidebook and I was reading the entries for all of these cards, and they're not, I don't mean to say that they're negative, but this is definitely shadow work for me. It is indeed just not being afraid of confronting yourself or being confronted with some issues that may be very triggering. It may be something difficult to accept, difficult to face, difficult to talk about, to think about, even to imagine, to recall, to remember. There's so many things that this deck pushes you to do. And as I said many times, I do not recommend this deck on a daily basis at all. This is too heavy, okay? Being too heavy doesn't mean that I don't recommend it. So I still think that it's an excellent deck for shadow work, but I would not recommend shadow work every day anyway. So let me just give you an example, because this is card number 34, Fear, Judgment, and Criticism, which is something that I really feel I am. So my husband loves to tell me that I am my own harshest critic, and I think he's onto something because I'm never happy with anything that I do. I am never happy. That is something that it's just very part of my personality. I am the Queen of Swords. I expect myself to, be a better person every time. Wisdom. I scrutinize everyone walking by and project external criticism and judgment. I constantly stop you in your tracks and point out disapproving looks, asking you what other people will think, because to me, what others think is paramount. It's just as important for you to make a good impression and have an excellent reputation for getting your dreams and identity, rather than be the object of gossip and rumors. I order you to take the most beaten path and not allow yourself to be noticed. I mean, you can find this sentence resonating or not, and I think that the majority of us would definitely recognize ourselves into what that message was. But it is undeniable, whether this resonates or not, that this is very confronting. And so this is, I believe, one of those decks that, yes, I do recommend it for shadow work. It is very affordable. It's a mass market deck, very new, so obviously easy to find. It's one of those decks that, honestly, you can use it as much as you want. It's not going to get ruined, or even if it is, I mean, honestly, it's about 25 Australian dollars. So it is not one of those decks that you want to treat with the golden gloves. Or velvet gloves. So what I would say is that just be careful and use it with parsimonious judgment. Be aware that this is a deck that can actually hurt you. And we don't necessarily need to get hurt to do shadow work, but this is one of the warnings that come with the deck. So the next prompt is Deity Work or Spirit Guides, a deck that serves as a spiritual bridge perfect for working with deities, spirit guides, or higher realms. It holds sacred energy and supports devotional practice or channeled messages. I had to go with this one because I'm actually using this deck quite a lot lately. It is the Dark Goddess Oracle deck by Caitlin McCarthy. Also this one has been published by Page Street Publishing, but I would say it is very easy to find and relatively affordable. I don't honestly remember how much I paid for it, but it was around $30 Australian, so it's always a very good price. So the reason why I recommend this one for deity work, and mind you, in this case I'm really focusing on deity. When we're talking about spirit guides, I would not recommend this deck. Spirit guides for me is receiving guidance. A deck that probably, if we're looking into tarot, it needs to be a deck that has a very powerful star card, for example. Or if you're talking about an oracle deck, I probably wouldn't go with a goddess oracle deck when it comes to spirit guides. For me, goddess are inscrutable, and they can be studies, they can be approached sometimes, but they don't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily feel for me like a goddess deck will give me guidance. So I would probably go with a shamanic deck. For example, the El Goliath Tarot, for me, that is definitely one of the decks for spirit guidance. But talking about deity work, this is definitely something that I would recommend. It is in black and white, so I understand that this may not be for everyone. The reason why I am recommending this, however, whether you like the black and white or not, or even this very specific type of artwork, is that we don't just have the image and the depiction of the goddesses as reproduced here. We have the names, obviously, but also we have a keyword associated with them. And honestly, when I look at deity or goddesses or gods and goddesses kind of oracle decks or even tarot decks, and I look at the keywords that are associated with them, I honestly think that this is the one that does the better job. So whenever I look at Ishtar, sexuality, for example, that really comes to mind. Or Izanami with potential, Yutian with strategy, Lilith with rebellion. Some of them are quite obvious, of course, Lilith with rebellion, but at the same time, Kali with destruction, of course. But we don't always know all of the deities, especially when it comes to goddesses. There's so many that come from so many different cultural backgrounds and lore and traditions. And it's not easy to remember the stories related to these goddesses in specific. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to memorize a few keywords related to them. When Santa Muerte, of course, is death, Randa is fear, Sekhmet is bravery. When you finally, let's say, acquaint yourself with the keywords that are present on the cards, This guidebook is good, but to be honest, it is, for my eyesight, it's a bit of a smaller kind of font, as you can see here. I can still read it, but I kind of have to focus. Dalnim, for example, courage. Dalnim is a Korean goddess of the moon. In one version of her myth, she climbed high into the heavens until she reached the moon, thus becoming its goddess. So obviously it tells you a little bit about the myth, which is always appreciated, because honestly, I do know Dalnim, but not many of us do. I do have a couple of really good friends from South Korea, so obviously we talk about these things every now and then. And that's the reason why I wouldn't have known that, but you know, it's possible that there's a number of Manat, for example. Manat is the Arabian goddess of fate, fortune, time and death. I did not know that. And so I read about the myth and I'm always interested. You guys know me, I'm a sucker for a good story or a good myth. I mean, my favorite thing is about lore, Japanese lore, and any folklore from any country. I'm just really interested. And then it does give you a little bit of a paragraph about the meaning of the card. So in this case, for example, peer deeply inside yourself and observe what is important to you. What is it in your life that illuminates the darkness? That is where you need to be focusing your energy, and so on and so forth. It is beautiful though to have the possibility to dig deeper whilst going through the guidebook, but already being able to read with the cards without the guidebook if you so wish, because of the keywords. And I was saying, this is, personally, I really like this art style. I think it's very expressive. I think it's very evocative as well. I am sometimes a bit, but not much, but how should I say this? One thing that it does jump out of the cards to me is the eyes. So I don't know if you can see, but all of the eyes of all of these goddesses, if I put the cards closer to the camera, you will see that they're all, I don't want to say empty, because they're very powerful and it doesn't feel like they're empty, but they're lacking the, what's it called, the irises and the pupils. So it's almost as if they were just white. But at the same time, there is also, I don't know if you can tell here and here, there's also a kind of a, there you go, this one is a lot more visible here and here on the eyes. It's almost as if there were a light that were coming out of the eyes, and it feels like it's the reason why they are goddesses, because inside themselves, they don't even need eyes, they already see and know everything. And they shine from the inside out, and that is one of the things that you can see whilst looking at these. So they shine from the inside out, and it comes out of their eyes. I don't know, I honestly don't know how to express this concept without sounding creepy. And I hope that I'm not creeping anyone out, because I know that there's a lot of us, me included, you know, sometimes I do have a problem with the eyeballs. In some decks when they are too prominent, let's say. This one, however, doesn't give me any visceral reaction, so I'm actually okay with that. But this definitely one of those decks that I actually highly recommend for deity work, because it really gives you the possibility to dig deeper onto these goddesses and the myths that are associated with them, which are really interesting. So the next one is Ancestor Work, a deck which suggests of connecting with ancestral wisdom, whether for lineage, healing or honoring those who came before. This one opens the path to ancestral connection, and I would never recommend anything other than the Wisdom of the Elders Oracle. This is just a fantastic deck. I love by Sean Leonard. The artwork is by Tracy Metallic and Ara Gugu. I really love using it in the month of October, because I feel like in the last few years that month has been very conducive for me for, you know, to do any kind of shadow work, but also specifically receiving guidance from beyond the veil. And this is one of the decks that I used all the time during the month of October. It feels like there's a really strong connection. It creates that for me. So it's one of those decks that really helps me in my practice, and it's not just a beautiful deck, and that's one of the reasons why I have absolutely no problems in recommending this one for this type of work. So ancestral kind of work, divination, related to those kind of messages that will come to you once you focus on the cards enough and you let them speak and you listen to the messages. Just absolutely amazing. I also like the art style and the colors. I use this one together with Gentle Tarot by Mary in the Sky. They pair up like a charm. It's a match made in heaven. This one also does have a very strong shamanic kind of feel as well, but you don't need to focus on that if that doesn't speak to you. Let me tell you, even the guidebook is just really, really amazing. With this deck, you will definitely be able to do a lot of ancestral work, and so I highly recommend it. So the next prompt is Divination, a deck that excels in traditional divination. Clear, direct and accurate. This is your top pick for those seeking predictive insight or practical answers. I have so many decks that I use for divination that I honestly did not know what to pick. There's a few that are my favorites, but would I recommend it? See, that's why this is a challenge for me. It's not just about a deck that I personally use in this context. It also needs to be a deck that I use, but I feel confident enough in recommending to others. Even so, I had to go with the Unveiled Tarot. It's just one of those decks that it's a one of a kind, once in a lifetime kind of gift from the world of tarot. I am so stoked that I have this deck and I had the possibility to work with it and study it. This is the Unveiled Tarot by Jessie Lonergan with a foreword by Mike Mignola, and this has been released by Liminal 11 or Sterling Ethos, depending on where you live, obviously. What should I say about this deck? It blew my mind. Would that be enough to convey the sense of awe that I have every time that I use this deck, every time that I look at it, every time that I talk about it? I am a groupie, okay. I recognize myself as a groupie for this deck. I am absolutely in love with this deck. I think that it speaks to me in ways that no other deck does. There is another one, but it's an indie deck and it's now out of print and really hard to find, and it sells for hundreds of dollars, but it's a Service Soul Tarot. That's another deck that really speaks to me personally. It feels like it's literally saying this deck is for you, Sylvia. Don't take any other deck. I'm the one for you, you're the one for me, etc. So there's two decks, the Service Soul Tarot and the Unveiled Tarot. These two, they're not just speaking, they're literally yelling at me sometimes. I would never stop finding new ways to read the cards, because it really gives you the opportunity to become your own type of reader. I hope that I'm explaining this correctly, because I really want you guys to understand how much this deck means to me, and the reason why I am definitely recommending it for divination, because this is just really telling you the truth. It's one of those decks that sometimes I say it doesn't shy away from telling you the truth, but this is not even in the ballpark. This is not an issue for this deck. Being direct, yes, absolutely, but it's almost as if it would take directness to a whole different level, and it really, well, I mean, look at this Ten of Swords, for example, let's say the structure of this deck. You have an image, of course, it is the modern take on the RWS, but you can say that for a number of decks. And yes, it's borderless. Yes, I do like that. It does look like it's a little bit of a graphic novel kind of style, but again, not really unique. What is unique though, because honestly, at least that I know of, or in my entire collection of 500 plus decks, this is the only one that does this. So there is an outer frame, I don't know how else to call this, and then there is a frame in the center of the card. More likely than not, it's in the center of the card, even though sometimes it's not exactly in the center, but that doesn't really change anything. You have an introspection, what I like to call an introspection into what is happening in the card. So you see here, it's probably a ball, there's society, everyone is dressed in their best clothes, there's drinks, there's a lot of luxurious items. I can see the decorations on top of the door. It feels like it probably reminds me of those balls in the court of a French king, for example, or perhaps even in the La Belle Époque in beautiful London. It definitely feels like it does have that kind of vibes. But then when you look at this character, because obviously this is a person, and the part of this person outside of the central frame looking absolutely normal, but then you will see inside the frame that this person actually goes around with 10 swords on her back. And this is where the shock factor happens, because you start understanding what is going on in this card. And what looked first impression like a nice smile here or here, you start seeing behind that smile, and you start understanding that this is not a smile, a benevolent smile. This is a mocking smile. This is a person that has been stabbed in the back. Being stabbed in the back obviously refers to being betrayed, being deceived, being told stuff behind your back. It's so really, really intense, but also incredibly hurting. Because being stabbed is already hurting people, of course, but being stabbed in the back, there's also a, let's say, a personal vibe to what happened, because you find yourself in a situation that you would never thought you found yourself in, and yet you still have to wear a smile on your face, because it's almost as if you still feel like you have to belong to this society, this ball that is happening, and this fake smile that everyone else has stamped on their face. But you carry those 10 swords on your back, and they're heavy, and they're hurting you, and you're bleeding, and you still have to keep on going, and you still have to wear this mask. I just really love this. The way in which it lets you speak and talk about the card, but the way in which it also delivers the message that it wants to convey, I think it's absolutely unique. But some of the decks that have a unique message are difficult to read. This one is very easy. And so I really, for divination, this one would definitely give you very clear, very direct messages, also unusual messages, and that's why I recommend it. So the next prompt is as above, a deck that connects the reader to cosmic or spiritual realms, ideal for soul work, life path exploration, or messages from the higher self. It speaks to the divine perspective. I had to go with the Tarot of the Cosmic Seed. So this one, probably because of the title of the deck as well, Tarot of the Cosmic Seed. So obviously there is this sense of cosmic vibes. This is by Lalania Simone, and this one is actually the mass market edition of this deck, which was originally published as an indie deck. I know that Lalania has just completed a Kickstarter campaign for the Mythweaver's Tarot, which I backed, and I cannot wait for that deck to be in my hands. There's also another couple of decks by her, the Oracle of Awakening, but there's also another one I believe that is coming out directly mass market, if I'm correct, later towards the end of the year. I feel like this deck is absolutely amazing. It does open up a portal to some cosmic vibes, and as such is probably my favorite recently when it comes to the very specific as above kind of work that I do in my practice. It's also because there is a sense of humanity that is transcending human realms and being projected into some more cosmic vibes, as I said earlier. It is due to many elements. There's sacred geometry, there's mandalas, there's a lot of very, how should I say this, very charged kind of symbology here. As you can see here, also alchemy, for example. So it is one of those decks that it works really well because it's accessible, I would say. But at the same time, it also gives you these cosmic vibes that lets you do some kind of a soul work, soul connection, soul work. So I would definitely recommend it for this. And also, I personally really like it. So this is one of the decks that I would, you know, even if it wasn't giving me these kind of vibes, you have the Tree of Life from the Kabbalah here, for example, I would still use it because I actually really like the artwork and the colors. And the next prompt is So Below. Of course, we had the As Above, and now we're looking into So Below. A deck you recommend for grounded, real world readings. This one captures everyday emotions, human experience, and earthly wisdom with clarity and depth. I had to go with the Slow Tarot. I just love this deck so much. This is really So Below for me, which is ironic because I would say that the art style is really beautiful and it feels like it's very precious. I'm not entirely sure, but let me just see whether it's saying this. Oil paintings, that's what I wanted to say, but because I really am not an expert on art, I didn't want to say something that sounded blonde, and so, but these are oil paintings and they really look and feel like oil paintings. So it is a kind of a precious deck for me, and I wouldn't normally associate a deck that is precious to me with the So Below, so with the nitty-gritty stuff of the everyday life. But then again, that is literally those are the vibes that I get from this deck, and I appreciate it for it. I really am. I mean, you cannot say that this is not, you know, the feeling of the Tower. It's the House of Cards, and it's the moment in which you understand that all of this effort that went into building this House of Cards, and if you never tried to build a House of Cards, try. You will get incredibly frustrated because you can get to a certain level and then you just, I don't know, you put a card in a different way, you miss the balance, I don't know, you miss the right way to put the cards down, and will just destroy the whole tower, and it's incredibly frustrating. So this is the sense that I do associate with the tower. The tower moment is about the destruction of something that no longer serves you, but it is still frustrating. You understand that it was something that no longer served you, but at the same time you also see and you still feel probably the effort that you put into building this tower. So I really love this, and it feels very down to earth. It feels very human. Everything is related to something that we can definitely recognize. There are no cosmic vibes, I would say, in this deck. Everything is very earthy. And even, you know, this character, for example, which is the one that is the prisoner of their own cage, a cage of their own making. And they are wearing these pants that look very modern to me. So there is a connotation to the elements in the cards that really speaks loudly of modernity or something very modern. And it's done on purpose. It's not something, even the flower pattern on the skirt of this person, which is a 9 of coins, for example. You know, it could have been something different, but it's very modern. It's something that really reminds us of something that we may even have in our closets, or we never know. Or the fact that this person is wearing glasses, reading glasses. Or, you know, the really nice shirt that this guy is wearing. Or the fact that he's got this particular car. There's a number of things that I would definitely relate to something very modern, something not just modern, but also very daily life, and So Below. And for example, this is the 5 of coins, is the person asking for money. So it's absolutely amazing. I really love this deck. It's got one of my favorite star cards of all time. But I really also appreciate the fact that I feel comfortable and confident when I'm using this deck, because it's not daunting to me. It feels like I'm having a chat with a friend. Maybe it's not my best friend, but it doesn't have to be. It's someone I feel at home with, it's someone I feel comfortable with. And this is the star card that I was mentioning earlier. Really, really beautiful. Absolutely, highly recommend this deck. Now, the situation of this deck, I don't know what's happening. I know that it's an indie deck. I know that it was out of print for a while, and then it was fetching really high prices, then it was reprinted. I don't know whether it is still available or not, but because it has been reprinted, we can always hope that perhaps it will be reprinted again if it's not in stock anymore. So the next prompt is the Hug deck, a deck that offers emotional support and comfort, gentle, compassionate, and soothing. This is a deck that feels like a warm hug for anyone going through a tough time. I have a few, but I always talk about them. So the Amber and Aura, for example, the Guardian Angel, but I wanted to talk an Oracle deck this time because I feel like I have been using it a lot lately, even though it's a deck that I bought 2-3 years ago. And I probably didn't use it as much at the beginning, but I am right now. And it feels like it resonates a lot with what I'm going through in these few months. And at the same time, it really feels like it's giving me very calm vibes. So it is this one, it's the Sacred Nature Oracle. So it's an Oracle deck. And let's talk about this deck, because honestly, it is very important, has become very important for me in my daily practice. See, for example, this is a deck that I would definitely recommend to use every day. It doesn't feel overwhelming, it's not confronting. It's, as a matter of fact, it is a hard deck for me, so it is very supportive. And we all need support every day, at least I do. So this is really transmitting this kind of really calming and calm vibes. Maybe because all of the characters, this is a photographic deck. It's a studio photography, you can tell, because there's obviously a very accurate kind of composition to these characters. I love the association between the characters themselves and the particular plant that is depicted on the card. So you will see the plant whilst looking or reading at the bottom of the card. So this one here is juniper, for example. But you also have a keyword that is associated with the image. And the image has got not just a person, but also obviously the plant. So what does come to mind when you think about juniper, but also when you look at this image? Guidance. So that's very interesting. Assertion with the fuller's teasel, connection with horsetail, spark with mango, consolation with weeping willow and consolation. That resonates so much with me. I just when I was little, I was going to a full board school, and in the backyard we had a lot of weeping willows. But in Italia, it's very similar. In Italian we call it salice piangente. So piangente means weeping, obviously. So we always had this idea that the branches, because they're literally very thin and they are brought down by the weight of the leaves, it looks like they're weeping. They're literally just letting, almost grieving, as in letting their hair down, etc. But at the same time, it is a very comforting kind of tree. Because when there's just a little bit of wind, then you will hear a very nice kind of sound coming from the friction between the leaves, and it provides you with shade. There's a quality to this tree that is, in a way, very fragile, because it doesn't look like a very sturdy type of tree, but at the same time is very resistant, because if you ever try to snap a twig out of a weeping willow, you will not be able to. You just cannot, because it's almost as if it were elastic. So absolutely adore this association with the word and the keyword consolation. I agree with it 100%. Hope with the night blooming Sirius, balance with chaste tree, positivity with the Scotch broom, and so on and so forth, comfort with the chamomile. So I really like the associations between, let's say, the keywords and the plants, and also the images themselves. And it feels like, as I said, it's a very calming kind of deck. It feels like a warm hug. It feels like it's telling me that it's okay, everything is going to be okay. I just need to, take a break and reconnect with myself and find my balance, find my center, my grounding, understanding that we are not an island, we are part of something bigger than us. Our lives are very small, and not in the sense of saying that they don't count, but in the sense of saying that there's always something bigger than us. And I really tune into this kind of really powerful energy, and I really like it. So the next prompt is a feel-good deck, a deck that uplifts, encourages and energizes, whether through color, artwork or message. This one is a perfect feel-good recommendation for readers who want joy and empowerment. I had to go with the Tarot Landscapes. I just really love this deck. This really is, for me, a feel-good deck, not in the sense of the hug deck. So I had to make a bit of a distinction between a hug deck and a feel-good deck, in the sense that, to me, a hug deck can make you feel better when you're feeling blue, whereas a feel-good deck is just a very positive deck, a deck that makes you smile, but doesn't necessarily have that depth of a hug deck. I don't know if I'm making sense. I hope I am. But this is an amazing deck. I feel that I probably chose this deck when I was reading the prompt and when it was saying whether through color. And that is definitely something that I recognize in this deck. The colors here are just absolutely amazing. And they are very saturated, very brilliant kind of colors. And so that's the reason why I look at these cards and it makes me feel good. I love the colors, I love the compositions, I love the art style, love everything about this deck. It is also a great reader, by the way, coincidentally. It is also a great reader. It is Tarot of Landscape, so obviously it's talking about landscape. It's not necessarily talking about human beings. There is, let's say, a live component in here, but that is due to animals that are present in most of the cards, but not all of them. For example, in the Nine of Wands, you don't have them, which is ironic because the Nine of Wands feels a very physical card to me. And so if there were a card that I would expect to have at least an animal presence, would be the Nine of Wands, but there isn't any. Unless we count these one. These could be, for example, fireflies. So that is definitely, it's an insect, but it's still alive. It's still a live presence. And I really like it because it talks about resilience. It talks about, going through the nighttime. And perhaps the nighttime is full of sometimes obviously darkness, but sometimes also deception, and sometimes uncertainty and the feeling of not being safe, but you're going through that. So really, really love this. The workout with the polar bear, fantastic. So I really, the manta ray with the Knight of Cups, and the kingfisher with the Six of Swords. Obviously, the guidebook is very helpful in this deck because it will tell you a lot about the story, about the creation of these cards. There's a couple of these that Francesca Matteoni is the, there you go, Francesca Matteoni, and Yoshimari is the illustrator. Francesca was retelling, for example, about a couple of these cards that she read about these, or she saw an image in the National Geographic magazine, or on social media, etc., and she was talking about these images. So it is actually very insightful. I highly recommend not just the deck, but going through the guidebook, because it would definitely give you a very strong experience. And the next prompt is the most versatile deck, a deck you recommend for handling any type of reading, love, career, shadow work, daily pools, and everything in between. Reliable, flexible, and reader friendly. This is the all-rounder that adapts to every situation. And I had to go with the Light CS Tarot. So this is the one in 18. With my members, we're coming to the end of this deck study. It's been really, really fun. I've posted so much material with basically we've been going through each and every one of the cards, and for each and every one of them I've talked about the symbols present in the card, and sometimes I've given out some guided meditation, some ritual. So it's been really, really fun to do this deck study. And we'll also have the live, I believe, in next week or some maybe in 10 days or something like that, I don't remember. But obviously, if you want to join my membership, this is the deck that we are coming to an end to study. But then we've voted, and we've chosen for the next deck the Fairy Tale Tarot by Lisa Hunt, which will be a cross deck sort of study, in the sense that this is the Spanish edition. Obviously, I tell the story all the time because I didn't want to spend hundreds of dollars, and the Spanish edition was available when this deck was out of print. But now it's available in English as a mass market, so it's not expensive. So we'll look into the fairy tales that are here. We'll also use other decks that are centered on fairy tales, so it's going to be lots and lots of fun. But that's the next deck, and this one is the one that we are just finishing the study of. This is a perfect deck for any kind of reading, to be honest. I think that it is beginners friendly, but it's also very modern, so at the same time. Ironically though, doing the study of the deck, I realized all of the symbols that are present in all of the cards, and there is so much to be said about a number of different disciplines. There's a lot of runes in this deck, there's a lot of sacred geometry, there's mandalas, there's Kabbalah, there's alchemy, there's astrology. So there's actually a plethora of symbols that make this deck not as easy as it looks on first impressions, but I would still recommend it for beginners because it does, let's say, give you the possibility to do a lot of different types of readings. So the next prompt is the most inspiring. A deck you recommend to inspire creativity, intuitive flow, or personal transformation, whether it's the art, the energy, or the depth of the messages. This one sparks something powerful in the reader. And I had to go with the Compass Mentis Tarot. This is a deck that I backed, a Kickstarter campaign that I backed last year. It's a photographic deck, so obviously there's a lot, and it's a black and white. So obviously there's a lot of limitations. If you don't like a photographic deck, or if you don't like a black and white deck, obviously this may not resonate with you, but I really believe that for me specifically, this has been an incredibly inspiring deck. I love the way in which the images are presented here, and also I love the association between the images and the meaning of the cards themselves. Why has this ballerina been chosen for the Eight of Pentacles? Because obviously it's talking about the monumental effort that goes behind achieving, the mastering of the art of the dancing, of the ballet. I did not have the body to be a ballerina, but I would have loved to be one. But everyone was like, don't even, consider yourself lucky that you couldn't do it because you ruined your feet, you ruined your toes. Your body is constantly starving because they go under really extreme diets. You're constantly training. You're always at risk of breaking a knee, breaking your back, breaking an arm, breaking a wrist, an ankle. You're obviously always pulling muscles left and right. I do know ballerinas back in Italy. One of them actually was also performing at the Theatre La Scala in Milano, so she was incredibly talented for sure. And I don't know whether, honestly, she's a magnificent person. I don't think she was happy. Lately she's starting to retire because she's 40. or 39. She's turning 40 soon, so she's starting to retire. And I think that I don't know, I wish all the best to her, but she was literally complaining all the time. So obviously it was something that was really, really hard. And so all of the other cards, there's always something that refers to an idea that I personally have about that meaning. And I love the way in which these are being portrayed. I think it's fantastic. It communicates a lot. I find it amazing, and I really, really resonate with all of these images. So it is inspiring also because whenever I see photographs, I feel like I want to get back into photography, which, once a year I become again a photographer whenever I travel. So it's always really nice. So we're almost there, don't worry. The best for beginners, a deck you'd confidently recommend to someone just starting their tarot journey. Accessible, clear, and easy to learn with. This one makes tarot feel inviting rather than intimidating. But look, I don't think that you have to look further than this. This is the Lucid Dream. Sorry, I have to do this because otherwise you wouldn't be able to read the foil. Lucid Dreams Beginner's Tarot with keywords. Sans Soleil. I highly recommend this deck for beginners. It comes with excellent keywords, and not just that, it comes with all of the symbols that you may need. It also comes with keywords associated with the reversal meaning of the card. It also is very beautiful. I actually personally really like it. And there is a possibility, I've seen a lot of people doing it, when you are confident with all of the keywords and you feel like you don't need them anymore, you can actually chop off the borders, and so you remain with the beautiful images. So I don't know whether there's something more that I can say to justify this pick of mine, because honestly, this is the tarot for beginners with keywords. I believe that as cliche or as obvious as it may sound, you want keywords. If you're a beginner, you want keywords on your cards. You want to be able to read them. You want to be able to associate them immediately. So this is beautiful. It's an excellent deck. It's artistically very pleasing. But very, very practical because of the keywords, and as I said, all of the astrological and alchemical references, and you also have all of the keywords associated with the reversal. So why not? One thing though, it's not a mass market deck, which is a pity, because had it been also affordable, would have been great. I do believe that there's a lot of mass market decks that have keywords like this. I don't have any. But if you have this one, I would definitely recommend it. If you don't, then another deck with keywords just like this one. So the next prompt is best for professionals. Of course, we went to best for beginners, best for professionals now. It actually suggests for experienced readers who need depth, nuance, and strong symbolism. Ideal for layered readings, spiritual insight, and working with clients at a professional level. Okay, to me that's two different things. When I work with a client, and I have many, and also when I do readings for my members, for example, I don't go with a deck that I would consider a deck for a professional. I don't know if I'm making any kind of sense. So my being a professional in tarot is split in two. I think that that's the best way to explain this. One is the continuous learner. I want to keep on learning things about tarot, whether it's astrological associations, alchemical associations, and so on and so forth. But the other part of myself that is a professional in tarot, as in I'm a professional tarot reader, then in that case I always choose a deck that I think is the best for that particular kind of question that the client is asking. Or I even propose a few decks to a client and then I let them choose, because it needs to be a deck that resonates more with them than with me. I hope I'm making sense. But in any case, I wanted to show you a deck that I feel like it's for more advanced readers. So let's put it this way. And it's the Hermetic Tarot. This is a mass market edition by US Games. And the reason why I prefer this deck to any thought or thought-inspired deck is because the titles that are here to be seen Sorry, let me just take this out. The titles that you can see on the cards, obviously, there you go. This is the title as assigned by the Golden Dawn and not by Aleister Crowley. So I have done the entire deck and walk with my members. That is, obviously all of the videos are still there. So if you want to join my membership now, I'm not doing it now, the deck and walk, but the videos are still available, so you can definitely go through them. And as I was saying, for each and every one of the decans, the most important thing that I was saying is the difference between the title assigned by Aleister Crowley and the one assigned by the Golden Dawn. I personally prefer the Golden Dawn to Aleister Crowley. I simply believe that Aleister Crowley had a really specific task, and that was to divulge the teachings of of the Golden Dawn and make them available to a bigger kind of crowds. And as a consequence of that, he had to sometimes oversimplify, but definitely simplify the message, in order to be to make it available to more people. The Golden Dawn was mostly elitist, so they didn't have that task. They didn't feel like they had to make things easier to be understood by others. And so I look at both the titles, the Hermetic titles, but I prefer the Golden Dawn. And this one gives you the Golden Dawn. So it is something that I really appreciate, because I don't have that many decks that give you the Golden Dawn Hermetic titles. Lord of Swiftness for the 8 of Wands. In many cases, you will find that they coincide. Whenever Aleister Crowley thought that the Hermetic title assigned by the Golden Dawn was easy enough to understand, but more often than not, he would actually have to simplify it. Now this one is for professionals, I believe, because there's so much symbology here. You can use the deck even if you're not a professional, of course, looking at the cards and reading, the way you would read them. But there's a lot of work that can be done in gaining a very deep knowledge of all of these symbols when you use this deck. So the next prompt is Witchy Vibes. A deck you'd recommend for those who love witchy aesthetics, moody vibes, magical symbolism or spell work, support, casting, altar work, etc. I have recently talked about this deck a number of times. I love it so much right now. I use it almost every day. So this is the Kitchen Witch Oracle by Jenna della Grottaglia. This is also a mass market deck released by Rockpool quite recently. I love the backs as well, this kind of ephemera feel to them. This is a deck that I love very, very much, because it really does give you the possibility of doing some very practical work. And this is reminding me so much of my auntie. My auntie, she was so close to nature in a very almost primordial way, but very I would say respectful, but also looking at nature as a resource. And as such, she would know all kinds of remedies coming from nature, but she will also look at nature as a source of direction, a source of messages. And she will be able to, and I'm not even kidding, at night, let's say in the evening after dusk, she would just go outside and wait for birds. And from, let's say, the way in which the birds will be flying, she would know what would have happened the next day. She would have known what the weather would be. And based on the weather, she would be able to tell you if this and this and this would happen or not. And I know that it sounds really far-fetched, but she was always right. And I think it was because it wasn't divination. I don't think she was prophetizing something. She was just reading signs. So I really love the way in which she taught me how to relate to nature and read nature in this way. And I really love this deck because it reminds me of her. There's so many recipes here. I call them recipes. These are spells, obviously. chill out spell, for example, with 1 lemon, 1 pinch of coarse salt, 1 small black candle, and then it gives you the instructions. There's a few of them. There's 36, I believe. 36. Return to Sender is one of the most powerful spells I've ever used. Whenever you feel that you're surrounded by negativity, and if you feel that someone is, let's say, wanting or wishing evil for you, or not even necessarily evil, but talking behind your back in a bad way, just not necessarily looking at you with positive eyes, but with the eyes of jealousy, for example, envy and something like that. If you feel that negative presence in your life, this is a fantastic spell. Return to Sender. As a divine reflection, I shine as a spark of light within the vast tapestry of existence, capable of redirecting negativity and returning ill intentions to their source. So I do this quite often. I don't see it as a way to wish ill intentions on others. It's literally just reflecting or sending them back to them, because you need to protect yourself. So to me, it's a way to protect myself. I hope I'm making sense. But in any case, so this deck, really, really amazing. I always have the limoncello blessings at the beginning because I really like this recipe for limoncello. But as you can see, it's also really beautiful. I mean, if you know Jenna della Grottaglia's art style, this is very recognizable, of course. But this is a very witchy kind of deck for me. It's got really strong witchy vibes. Not just for the art style, but as I said, because of the activities that you can actually spend some time on, and looking through the guidebook, etc. So what you got on the cards, because obviously in this case you definitely need the guidebook. It's almost as if it were a recipe book. So on the card you just have the name of the spell. So this one is, for example, Dispelling Fears and Confusion. And then you have a kind of an affirmation at the bottom. I am a beacon of light, dispelling darkness and fear with my inner radiance. And it is really beautiful. You can also use it, I guess. I haven't tried using it as an oracle deck, because this is just so perfect for the use that it proposes. So, and it just one deck that is also really easy to use when you look at spells and you find them in the guidebook. So I don't know whether you will want to use it as an oracle deck, but I think it's possible. And the next prompt is Astrology Work, a deck you recommend for astrology lovers and cosmic seekers, one that weaves planetary wisdom and archetypes into its structure, ideal for exploring birth charts, transits and celestial guidance. In this case, I had to go with my favorite 60s vibes deck. This is the Cosmic Dreamscape Astrology Oracle deck. This one is by Nina Khan. This one is actually really good. I mean, it's not just beautiful, and it's not just, what should I say, really psychedelic because of the colors and the art style, etc. It's actually really good as an astrology oracle deck. And it would teach you a lot, or at least, let's say, it is the deck that I would recommend for you to at least start, getting your training wheels, getting started with astrology and wanting a deck, not just a book that goes with with your studies. So this one obviously talks about all of the houses, talks about all of the zodiac signs, it talks about all of the planets. It talks about all of the positions as well. Mercury retrograde, which is finally over, because it was just terrible. Solar eclipse. It talks about the nodes and the squares, and all of these kind of things that are obviously very. I think it's fascinating, but at the same time, it is something that you can choose not to know when you use tarot, but at the same time it will give you an additional layer of interpretation of the cards, or at least some cards. So it is something that I'm not an astrologer, but I would definitely want some kind of a astrology knowledge even when using tarot, because it helps me be a better tarot reader. Obviously, if you're just an astrologer or you want to focus on astrology, then I don't know whether I would recommend this deck, because it doesn't necessarily go as deep as you want to go. But it is, it's a beautiful deck. I love the art style, very psychedelic, as you can see, very 60s. The colors are fantastic, very acid trip kind of colors. I mean, seriously, look at this, the 12th house, rest and rejuvenate. And obviously it shows someone having this drink or a trip. Venus attracting abundance, for example. Virgo, tidy up your life, and so on and so forth. Retrograde, reflect, refine, redo. You know why redo is a perfect keyword for Mercury retrograde? Because you fail so many times that you have to redo things like a million times before you can actually finish your projects or what it is that you're doing. But in any case, really like this deck. I think it's very comprehensive, but again, from the point of view of a tarot reader, not necessarily. I don't know whether it's just as helpful when you want to be an astrologer. I don't think so, but I'm not an astrologer, so I wouldn't know. Perhaps it is very deep as well. Really, really love this deck, and as I said, for that particular kind of work that you might want to do, I highly recommend it, because it's actually really nice to look at, and it puts a smile on my face. Really like this one. So that was it, I believe. Yes, 15 prompts, really long video. I hope you enjoyed this, and I would love to see other VRs to this deck, because it would be so much fun. But for now, have a great day.